Hi, welcome to Fiberchats. My name is Irina. I'm the host here. And I met my guest today, first time at H&H Americas. So it's for those of you who don't know, it's a craft trade show. So it's business to business, and there is a lot of very talented individuals, including my guest, Melissa Galbraith. Welcome to Fiberchats.
Thank you so much for having me.
So you are the creator behind MCreativeJ. That's the name of the company. Tell me a little bit before we get into the whole business part and all the books you published and all the kits people can find. Tell me how you learn how to embroider. Like, when did that start?
I actually learned from my mom. So growing up, my mom has a giant craft room, and my sisters and I got to do everything from like quilting to embroidery to bobbin lace. I even got to design and work on like school dresses for school dances and things like that. And we really dabbled in anything and everything that was like hands-on and so much fun. I will admit I did not love embroidery as a kid. I just didn't have the patience for it. But when I kind of got back into like graduated and got into the workforce, I missed that tactile crafting experience and ended up picking embroidery back up and really fell in love with it. So now I get to do it full time.
Well, when I took a couple classes on embroidery, and I used to do cross stitching like early on, and my grandma showed me some stitches. But now that I'm looking at like embroidery on YouTube, let's say, there are such a huge variety of stitches. It's not just like, putting color in your needle and like going back and forth. There's like so many different textures that you can achieve with it. What was that learning process for you like? Did you learn from like, did your mom showed you everything, or was it like learning from books, from YouTube? How did you learn?
I will say my mom showed me the basics. So, kind of like the back stitch and satin stitch and some French knots and lazy daisies and things like that. I got back into it. I didn't like remember all of those things. But for me, when I think about embroidery, I think about it as kind of like coloring with thread. So I kind of just treated it like I would coloring, and I kind of played around with different stitches and, used books and sometimes like tried to just figure things out and make stuff up and then realized it actually was a stitch or things like that. And just kept playing around because I also love creating different textures and things like that as well too, and adding lots of really cool things that way.
Well, let's talk about like you first playing with embroidery just to sort of decompress after work. At
Yeah.
what point did you decide to go into like writing books about it and teaching classes and creating kits and all of that stuff?
Gosh, it's been kind of a long journey. So I've been doing MCreativeJ for maybe like 12 years now. And I kind of started as just like a fun side project. And I actually just used to do farmers markets where I would sell some of my finished embroideries. And while I was at those farmers markets, I had a lot of people come into my booth and say, "Hey, I really want to learn how to embroider. This looks so cool." And I found that I actually would rather teach people how to embroider than actually sell my embroideries. And so I started teaching workshops, and I enjoyed that process so much more. And in workshops, people really wanted more information, more resources, and I was like, okay, well, how can I offer more resources for people? And I have a website and I've been adding to it with like lots of blog tutorials and stitch tutorials and things like that. But I wanted to figure out how can I reach more people? How can I do that? And a book kind of seemed like a next step in that process. So I kind of figured out how to publish a book and what I wanted to do and like share in that kind of a book, and have been able to do that way.
Tell me the idea of the first book. Like, how did you decide on what you're gonna write, what to put into that book, what information, and like how much to tell and how much to keep for yourself for the next one?
So my first book is called How to Embroider Texture and Pattern, and it's actually has 20 different landscape patterns in it. And when you write a book, you really want to figure out what is your niche, what you want your topic to be, and what you can really like say on that topic. And at the time, I was really creating lots of different landscapes, and playing around with lots of textures that way, and using lots of different like fabrics to add to the landscape and things like that. And when I was figuring out kind of like what other books and resources were available, there weren't a whole lot of resources on landscapes. And so I found that that was a really great way for me to be able to like offer resources there. And that way I was able to like share how I really like to play with stitches and textures. And for me, I love adding really like dense textures and stitches. You can kind of see with this landscape, I layer lots of different stitches, adding them in, playing around, using fun like playful pattern fabrics to add movement with the piece and things like that. I'll also kind of layer stitches and patterns this way. So this is kind of like tulle, and then there's fabric on the back underneath this one. So it adds like depth with this piece here, playing around that way. And I mean, for me, when I write a book, I want you to feel like someone's holding your hand along the way and you have a lot of really great resources, and that you feel comfortable being like, hey, I really get this and I really feel like I can then embroider and have a lot of fun. And I really feel like I put my all into every book that I write. And yeah, I mean, I don't really hold back on a lot of it.
You feel like you are an artist or a crafter first? Because to me, like the most sort of intimidating thing about embroidery is that you have this perfectly great piece of fabric, right? That you're about to ruin with the needle pokes through it. And it's better look good because otherwise, like, what are you gonna do, right? Like it's permanent solution on that fabric. So what's your process? Like, do you sketch first on just piece of paper and then transfer it?
So I will say first off, it's just thread. You can always take it out. It's not like you're cutting into it or like painting it. It's not permanent. You can always take it out. But for me, when I start with a project, I usually kind of find reference photos or things like that, or take photos and stuff. And then I will start with thumbnail sketches, which are really small, like 1 to 2 inch sketches. And then from there, I'll kind of iterate on a design, maybe do a couple different sketches, and then decide on one that I like, and then make it much larger. And then from there, um, try that design, and then I will transfer it to actually the fabric, play around with the design there, and then actually I will like digitize it, turn it into a pattern, and then actually like redo it again to make sure that all of the like stitches and pattern information is correct, so that way it feels like you could actually do it and it makes sense.
Right. And do you think like anybody can do it? Is that the skill that like anybody can learn? Or do you have to be an artist to be an embroidery artist?
No, I feel like anybody can embroider. And honestly, like you don't have to use all the stitches. Like you could use 1 or 2 stitches and be totally fine. I love playing with different stitches because I get bored doing the same thing over and over again, and I want lots of different texture and things like that, but you don't have to do that.
Right. Well, a lot of your landscape pa paintings, I don't even know what to call it, like pieces of art, are they inspired by where you grew up, where you live?
Yeah, so a lot of my work is inspired by where I live right now. I live in the Pacific Northwest, kind of in Washington State, and it's really green and luscious. We have beautiful mountains, and my first book has some different like mountain pieces in here. This actually waterfall on the cover was inspired when we went to Hawaii. This one is when we went to Tulum here, kind of like walking in the forest and things like that. So a lot of the pieces are really inspired by trips I've been able to take or just being around where I live right now.
Right. Well, let's talk about the second because that was the first book, but then you like totally changed the direction with the second book. Tell me about that.
I did. So my second book is called DIY Embroidered Shoes, and it's all about shoe embroidery. So when I finished my first book, I really enjoyed it and had so much fun. And I wanted to think about what would I want to do next? And at the time, I was embroidering tons of my clothing. You can actually see I have an embroidered shirt on right now. And like, I will admit, like, probably half of my wardrobe is embroidered. And I was kind of talking to my editor and saying, well, what would be kind of a next thing we could do. And I was seeing like, well, would clothing embroidery be a cool next book? And I had sent her some like projects, like photos of projects that I'd worked on. And one of them was an embroidered shoe. And she was like, oh, I really love this shoe. How do you feel about like doing more shoes? And I was like, well, let's think about it. So I went and like tried some more shoes, some different designs. And I was like, I think I could, you know, share more tips and tricks and like talk about this more and have other like cool things to say and play around with it. So I kind of like explored more bead embroidery with shoes and like adding some different cool designs this way. Um, Playing with different types of shoes, ones that like are more like slip-ons versus ones that open up more, and different areas you could like stitch on your shoes and things like that. And I had just so much fun playing around with them. And with this book, there are set designs, kind of like these shoes that I'm holding up right here, but there's also about 50 different mix and match patterns in the back. So you can see with this bird right here, this is one of the patterns in the book, but there's also more birds in the back of the book that you can kind of mix and match. And actually this branch here that's on the tongue, it's just the branch flipped around from this branch right here. So you can really add lots of other cool like pieces to make it your own, which is what I wanted people to do so that they can customize their shoes and, have them exactly how they want them.
So it's almost like a stitch dictionary in knitting, like where you have the pattern dictionary where people can take like little patterns and mix and match them.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah. And I mean, I've seen people like take some of these patterns that are in the shoe book and just do them on fabric too, because they like the patterns and designs. You don't have to do them on shoes either. You could put them on whatever you want, which is exciting as well.
You remember first time like walking somewhere and seeing someone wearing shoes with embroidery on them that you created?
Gosh, I actually don't know if I've ever seen anybody wear embroidered shoes that I have designed. I've seen embroidered shoes, but they're usually like machine embroidered. And I'm always like, those are so cool. But I haven't ever seen a lot of people wear hand embroidered shoes.
Oh
I
God.
think they're really fun,
If,
though.
if,
Yeah.
if you've done those shoes, please send me pictures. I would love to pass them on to Melissa. I'm sure
Yeah,
somebody must have done those shoes.
please do. Yeah, I've actually gotten to teach some workshops, which are really exciting. The workshop I teach is this like colorful cloud shoe because it kind of covers a lot of the basics of getting to stitch on shoes, and we kind of talk about how to really break in your shoe and then get comfortable stitching with it. But it's a very labor intensive process, so we definitely don't finish in class, but you get a good sense of how like stitching on shoes works and things like that. So hopefully people will finish sometime and I get to see what happens with them.
Well, when you teach, like when you started teaching, I have a lot of friends who teach different techniques, like in different fiber arts. And the most common thing I hear is that they are so afraid that there is not going to be enough material for the 3 hour class or however is the class. And then they come there like with this encyclopedia of material and they can only get through so much during the class. Like, how was your process of teaching? How did you figure out like how much to teach, how to teach, what pace to go to make everyone feel comfortable?
I mean, it definitely is kind of trial and error. When I first started, I was like, oh, well, we have to fit in tons of different stitches and all sorts of different things. And I actually found with my classes, they're usually about 2 hours long, and we can fit about 4 or 5 different embroidery stitches in there. We kind of cover getting started with embroidery, splitting apart your thread, threading the needle, making like knots at the end. And then I do a kind of variety of stitches where, I'm sorry, classes where we kind of play around with different patterns. And then each class has like a couple different stitches that we'll try. And like there's a variety of stitches per class. So some class might have like the satin stitch, the reverse chain stitch, the back stitch, and like the lazy daisy. And another class might have other stitches that go with it. Um, but you get to kind of sample around and play with it. And in class, I really try to like pace it based on how people are going and doing with it, because like I don't want people to feel like rushed if they're like like needing more time with it and things like that. And that means sometimes like we don't get through everything, and that's okay because I don't want people to feel like, you know, if they're not getting it, then I don't want them to be like, oh, well, I'm not getting this and I'm not going to get the next thing. And then it's like frustrating for them. But if like they are getting things and we are working through other stuff, then I will like add other stuff on because I'm like, oh, well, you guys have this. We could do something else in class as well, too. But it kind of just depends on the class, you know?
Well, when you started first, it was again just to decompress from work and like to have some peaceful hobby. Does this hobby ever stresses you out?
Um, I don't, not when I'm actually like getting to embroider. I really enjoy, still really enjoy the meditative part of getting to stitch. I will say now that I do this as a business, there are lots of other parts that can be stressful in that, but the actual act of getting to embroider is still very relaxing for me.
Well, how much time do you get to actually embroider nowadays that you're running a business?
It definitely depends. Some days I don't get to embroider at all, and some days I'm able to like block out a couple hours. So it just kind of depends on what's going on that week and the time of the year.
Well, there is this balance basically between being an artist, right? And like just pursuing your heart's desire and like coming up with the idea and just going at it and running a business. So
Mhm.
not everything can be turned into a kit, I'm sure. And some things that would bring you joy is not necessarily something a beginner embroiderer can do. How do you balance that? How do you keep your artistic heart happy while still pursuing your business ambitions?
I mean, I think that's kind of why I really enjoy being able to teach workshops and write books along with being able to make kits because kits you can only like fit so much in a kit based on like what you can source and price points and things like that versus like with a book you can kind of use however many stitches and however many colors and things like that you want because like it doesn't necessarily matter. You're not having to put like a kit together and things like that. And with a class, there's a lot more flexibility as well too, based on what you're teaching. And I think with also when I get to like write a book and work on that, it's kind of like a mini collection where I get to sit down and really immerse myself in that for a while and dive in really deep, which is kind of how I felt with when I was working on my third book, which is all about like 3D embroidery and getting to play around with like lots of different stitches and using them in different ways. And I just like really have so much fun when I get to do that because I find that sometimes I don't always get to set aside that time. So getting to work on that is just feels really exciting.
No, no, let's go more in details about the third book because it's not even out yet. So you guys getting the sneak peek of this third book that's about to be published. So tell us a little bit more.
Yeah, so I have a little postcard right here. It's called 3D Botanical Embroidery and Stumpwork. And you can kind of see these are all wearable pieces here. So this is like a ring, these are earrings, that's a hair clip, and this is a brooch right here. But they're medicinal, poisonous, and carnivorous plants, and they're all like 3D pieces that you can wear, and they're stump work, a lot of them. So that means you use like wire and padding to create these more sculptural elements that you'll then take off the fabric and then put onto things like earrings and like ring settings and stuff. So it's like something that maybe you haven't seen before. That's really exciting.
And when is this book coming out?
It comes out early October.
So you guys stay tuned for that, and I'll put all the information how you can find this book later. Um, Tell me a little bit about what goes into writing a book. Like, how long does it take you, and what do you have to do to put it all together?
Gosh. So when you write a book, you, I guess let's start at the very beginning. So you pitch your idea to the editor, and the editor then kind of takes it to the publishing board and they say like yes or no. And once it gets approved, it comes back, and there's usually kind of some parameters around that based on like length and what needs to go in it. Um, and then you kind of have like set deadlines along the way. For me, I usually get about like 5 or 6 months to write a book. And so you kind of have like the beginning, and then you have kind of have to have like a table of contents, which is a little flexible. You can edit it as you go. And then like projects and things like that. And then like there's a midway point where you have to submit things and kind of like show that you've worked on it with other stuff. And then everything needs to get submitted by the deadline. And for me, I have this like giant Excel spreadsheet that has like all the stuff that needs to go in it. And I kind of update it and edit it as I go. But with my books, there's kind of like the table of contents with the introduction, and then it talks about different like materials and things you'll need. And then it has a really robust stitch glossary with lots of different photos in there. And then it dives into the projects with lots of step-by-steps in there, as well as the um, like project outlines, patterns in the back, or if there's like additional patterns and things. So usually I will start with the actual projects first. So that way I know kind of what stitches I'm going to use and things like that. And then as I'm working on those projects, I kind of keep track of the stitches, put them in the Excel spreadsheet, and I'm kind of like writing the patterns as I go. And then once I have those solidified, then I'll go back and kind of like work on the different like stitches and things I need and like say like, okay, these are the different materials I use. So I need to make sure they're in this section and kind of like going back and forth and just checking things off the Excel spreadsheet as I go. And there's like tons of different columns that are like, did you get the photos? Did you write the descriptions? Did you like have all these different pieces and stuff like that?
Oh, are you a perfectionist in your everyday life?
I will say I definitely have like an A-type personality, so there's like lots of lists and deadlines and things like that, but I also try to make sure there's like flexibility in there as well too.
What's your mom thinking about what you turn into?
When I got back into embroidery, it was very funny because she looked at me and she goes, "You hated that as a kid." But I feel like she's very proud of me, which is exciting.
When you come up with the idea for the kit, like how does it happen? Do you think in terms of collections right away? Do you just see something, take a picture, and then think, oh, that would be a great kit?
When I design kits, I guess I don't really think in collections for kits. It's kind of like whenever inspiration kind of hits, or I keep like a running list, because I will say, and maybe other people who are creative also think this like this, um, you can't be creative all the time. And so sometimes you have to like work when creativity hits, or maybe like if like you have other stuff going and you can't tackle that idea, then you kind of just have to like make sure you have that idea and then keep like hang on to it and then get to it when you can. And so sometimes I have to do that when you have other stuff going. And for me, like sometimes it's like a cluster of ideas, and sometimes it's like things that maybe go together based on like if I had to travel for work, or if I like saw something when I was walking my dogs and things like that. And so it's kind of like a random collection of ideas, and maybe they go together, maybe they don't. But then I'll kind of like do some different sketches and things like that. And I try to like um, limit the like kits based on like a certain number of colors, and like use some of the fabrics I already have with my other kits and things like that. Just because it's it can be challenging when you try to like have tons of different fabrics and tons of different threads and things like that. You can kind of see the bookcase behind me. That is all thread back there. So
That was my next
clearly
question.
I have a lot of thread. So it's like just trying to figure out like what you can actually have in your space, and like make sure you can source and things like that when you're putting stuff together. But I will say there probably isn't like a super cohesive collection, which is why I usually say a lot of my work is nature inspired. So there you'll find like landscapes and plants and flowers and things like that. And they kind of all go together, but I wouldn't say like you're going to get like a set that is like these three plants are all like, or these three flowers are in like a trio and stuff.
Well, talking of supply lines, first you had COVID, then you have tariffs hitting us. How do you deal with the uncertainty of the market and like not knowing what happens tomorrow?
Gosh, yeah, it's been stressful, but I mean, I think you just kind of have to keep rolling with it, honestly. I mean, I haven't, knock on wood, I haven't had it really affect me too much so far. I mean, I will say that I have been talking with my suppliers and like trying to keep abreast of everything that's going on and making myself like aware of stuff, not like, keeping my head in the sand, but at the same time, I'm trying to also run my business and keep it going, you know? So you just have to like, stay stay informed and like keep going. That's all I can really say.
When people look at you, they see this successful woman who got her third book about to be published, who teaches classes, who sells kits, who has it all figured out. Was it always easy? Like, was there any struggles along the way?
Oh gosh, it's definitely not easy. Oh man, I will say like getting to where I am now, I definitely didn't think that this was even possible. I mean, it's just me, so I have had to figure out how to do all of this. Like figuring out how to put my first kit together, how to run a workshop, how to reach out to different stores and be like, hey, do you want me to work with you to have workshops, or even like how to do wholesale, how to like reach out to stores and be like, do you want to carry my kits and things like that. So it's all been a really big learning curve and kind of like a process and year over year. And you kind of just have to continue to grow, make connections and friends within like the business or like area you want to be in and like learn. Obviously, I've definitely like made mistakes and had to like grow and figure out from them. But I feel like it's been really exciting to continue to move forward as a small business as well.
Right. Well, as I mentioned, we've met at H&H Americas. So tell me what you get out of the show or what you look to get out of show like H&H Americas. What kind of connections you're making there and how would it be helpful for other small businesses who are in the craft industry?
Oh gosh. So I've actually been going to H&H America for the last 4 years, and I really love the show because it's so like fiber and soft craft centric, which isn't something that I found with a lot of other trade shows that I go to. So it's really exciting because I get to meet other like shops that I maybe only get to talk to online or I've reached out to via email but actually haven't met in person. They get to see your products in person and really get to touch and feel them. And I will say a lot of shops will walk or like people will walk around and be like, oh, I've seen this online or I've seen this on Fair, which is a wholesale website. And when they actually get to see it in person, it's a really big deal. And they're like, oh, I do like this. I do want to get this and things like that. You might have people who weren't even aware of your product get to see your things and be like, oh, I do know you now. I do want this. Or like maybe it's something I might consider in the future. You get to make connections with people you might even not know. Like we didn't know each other before H&H, and now we're having this wonderful interview. And then I get to also like meet like my business friends in person, like that I only really get to talk to online or through Instagram and things like that and connect with them, which I really love. This year I was in the Needlework Alley, which was like a bunch of different kind of like embroidery or embroidery related artists. And that was really exciting because a lot of them, like they were from all over, like Canada and like Virginia and things like that. And so we really hadn't gotten to like hang out face to face. And so this was like kind of the time that we all got to see each other and like hang out, which was exciting.
Well, when people buy your kits, like, one thing about H&H, they always talk about like finding your target audience, right? Reaching your consumers. Who is your target audience? Like, who do you envision buying your kits?
Gosh. Well, for me, so when I guess like when you think about like your target person, you always kind of like create this person in your head who's like, and you come up with like a name and like an age group and things like that. And I always kind of think of somebody who's like kind of like me, maybe a little bit older, who and I'm 35 by the way, so kind of like maybe a little bit older who like just wants to like kind of craft and hang out, and maybe they're crafty, maybe they're not, but they just want something that's kind of like fun that they can grab it, have all the pieces, have some instruction. Maybe they need a little hand holding, maybe they just like want something to play around with and like get to explore and craft and like have a good time with it. And the thing is like it could be an easy gift, it could be something they want to do. Like my kits have different skill levels, so it could be for somebody who's a new stitcher, it could be for somebody who's like super advanced and things like that. So there's lots of different options that way as well.
Can you tell us a little bit like what goes into a kit, what people can expect in your kit?
Yeah. So this is one of my most popular kits, which is the Cyanotype Botanicals kit. You can see kind of the picture on the front, and then this little strip right here tells you what's inside. But you're going to get a really high quality beechwood hoop fabric. So the color of the fabric you see on the front is the color you get. I include full skeins of thread. You'll get your embroidery needle. I include backing materials, which are like felt in a sawtooth hook. And then I have full color printed instructions in there that have photos that walk you through step by step for all the different stitches and how your pattern gets put together. And then on my website, I also have stitch videos. So if you're kind of like, I need a little more visual, that will also walk you through that way as well too. And you can kind of see with this kit as well, there's lots of different colored fabrics and like hoop shapes and things like that. So whatever you see on the front of the kit is what you're going to get.
That looks very exciting. Actually, I think it's like also a perfect gift for a teenager because like I saw there was a high school students touring H&H Americas, so I'm sure like for them that would be like a popular take home kind of gift.
Oh, absolutely.
Well, talking about business, you have to promote yourself, you have to market yourself. How, and it's like it's one thing to be an artist, it's one thing to know the skill, right? To be able to actually create these masterpieces that you do. It's whole other set of skills to market yourself and promote your books. Tell me how you were learning about that.
Gosh, I mean, it's been a process year over year, and I've kind of just realized you have to put yourself out there. No one is gonna like give you opportunities. Like you have to just say like, "Hey, I'm here. Hey, I want to share about my work." And like, if anybody's gonna say, "Hey, I want to give you an interview. Hey, I would be interested in sharing more about this," you definitely should take them up on it. Like anything and everything is a great opportunity to share more about your work. And you should definitely give it a try. And I think you should like even if it's just like sending a couple emails to people like to like a publication you really like or like your local news channel or something like that. Like you never know what that email, like it could go to the right people, it might go to their spam filter, but like you don't know like it, what could happen from that, and it could be something amazing, but if you don't put yourself out there, you're not going to know.
I remember interviewing this guy once, and he just learned how to crochet, and he decided like immediately, like a few weeks later, to send his design to a couple magazines. And like he said he sent to like 100, and like one decided to publish, and he became a published designer. So it's like it's so very true. Like you just never know what possibilities are around the corner.
Absolutely.
Well, I saw you also you were doing printing on the fabric. Like, is that something you do, or are you buying fabric that's already of certain color?
So I buy like fabric that is a color. So this fabric right here, it comes in that color. And then if the fabric has like a print or pattern on it, I get it that way. I used to actually dye some of my fabric. So in the cyanotype kit here, it's an indigo dyed fabric. And I used to dye the fabric, but I now sell too many kits to do that on my own. So I have found a really beautiful indigo dyed like pattern fabric that I was able to source that looks amazing. That works for it.
How do you stop yourself from doing absolutely everything? Because it's like it's so tempting. Like once you're in it, like what's one more thing, right? Like to over
Yeah.
overload yourself? How you manage that?
I mean, it's just me for my business. So really you have to say like, do I have time for this? Is it worthwhile for me to do this? Or could I source this and would it like save me so much time? Because like if I were to dye fabric, I would have to still buy the white fabric, like get the dye, and then like spend probably like a couple days then dyeing all this fabric, hanging it up to dry, then like, setting the fabric and like then getting it all ready to go versus like if I just bought the bolt of fabric and cut it, that would save me like probably a whole week right there. And honestly, like I would love to dye all that fabric. I love dyeing fabric. It's super fun. But you have to decide where is the best place to put your energies and like, do you have other things that you also need to work on at the same time? And if you're trying to grow your business and then do other things that you also need to work on as well too, maybe that's not where you need to put your energy, but you need to put it in another place.
Well, you mentioned the spreadsheets and how organized you are. Do you have like a exact vision of where you see your business going and like what's your goals for your business?
A little bit, yeah. I mean, so I'm a paper and planner person, and I kind of have like for the year, I set out kind of like goals that I want to meet and projections and things like that based on like how I did last year and like maybe what I want to do for this year and things like that. And then I would work backwards from that for the year and say, like, okay, if I want to hit that goal, then maybe I need to set these goals for like this quarter and like what I would need to accomplish in this month versus this month and things like that. And that's kind of how I would work towards that for the like meeting all those at the end of the year. And I make them kind of flexible so it's not like super rigid and I have to do this specific day. Um, but it helps you to like hit make the like bigger vision more possible and break it down into smaller steps.
Well, we live in the world of analytics and the views of the reels and the likes and all of those things. And I recently had a discussion with my husband about like our definition of success, and my definition of success was completely like polar opposite of his. Like it's not all about money, it's not all about views. What's your definition of success?
Um, Gosh, I mean, I think I think it changes year over year. For me, like last year, because this is my full-time business, I was able to give myself a raise. So that was like really exciting. So that was really like a successful thing for me. And I think for this year, I have a couple different parameters. Like I wanted to have like be able to add so many different wholesale clients and hit like a certain target of like um, profitability within my business. And I think um, those were some of the things like monetary wise that would be really exciting. But I also think there's also the creative side of your business that helps you feel more successful. And so I also set some parameters around like I would like to have like designed, like 3 advanced kits and 3 intermediate kits and things like that. Um, so having some like different markers that way as well too.
You ever hit like creative block when you like don't feel like embroidering at all?
Absolutely. I mean, and I have found that it's better to not push myself because then it's frustrating because I'm working on a piece that I don't enjoy and I'm like pushing myself to like do something that I want to do but don't actually like doing at that time. So I just really have to be like, okay, take a break, you know, it'll come back to you. You'll get to work on it when you enjoy it. But that's also kind of the time sometimes where I can go back to maybe like my running list of ideas that I'd had before that I wasn't able to get to and be like, do I want to work on these now? Are these sparking interest for me? Or like, do I just need to take a break and like do a completely different craft or like not do anything at all? Sometimes you just need to like not do anything.
Well, if you read like books from Victorian time, let's say, like all the ladies were sitting in their drawing rooms and embroidering, and you can see some of the examples of that work in the museums nowadays. When you see these old masterpieces, or maybe it's not masterpieces, right? Because they were just ordinary women sitting and embroidering. What do you take out of that? Like, is that inspiration? Is that like, do you feel like you're creating masterpieces, or do you feel like you're still learning things?
I think both. I think there's a lot we can definitely learn from historical embroidery, and different really cool techniques and designs. And I think I I love creating different embroideries, and I love like the designs I get to create, and I want people to be able to have fun with them and hang them on their wall as artworks as well too. But I also think that like there's always something more to learn, and that's what's exciting about like working in a like craft and an art form that you can like continue to explore and enjoy. With embroidery, there's like hundreds of different stitches, and I will say I don't even know all of those different stitches, which is why I love to continue to play around and try something new and try to like use stitches in different ways. And that's just like really like the joy of getting to create.
Well, if a couple hundred years from now somebody found a few pieces of yours in the museum, which one would you want it to be?
Oh gosh. I don't know. I mean, I think it's hard because like my style kind of changes like every like few years. I will say like crafting is kind of like fashion. It kind of like goes through like cycles and changes. And I think all of us kind of do that as well too, where like we like really love working on something for a while and then we might like kind of like continue to grow and then work on kind of a different project. So like for me, it's like I had like this, I have a bunch of landscapes that I really love and enjoy, and I would love for one of those to be in a museum. But then I kind of like transitioned to more wearable pieces, and like if one of those in a museum, that would be super cool too. And now like I've gotten into a lot more like cool 3D pieces, and like if one of those were in a museum, I'd be like, I would love that as well too, you know? So any of those, I would say like if I was remembered for any of them, that would be great.
Well, have you ever considered doing like a solo art exhibition somewhere?
Not really. I mean, I've had so in some of the like shops that I get to teach workshops in, they'll have like art displayed on walls and things like that. So I had with my first book, I did get to display a lot of the different landscape pieces that were there, which was really lovely. But I haven't really done anything else since. I think because um, I don't really like after, so I will say like after I kind of transitioned from like selling my embroideries to teaching, I don't actually sell a lot of my work anymore, like the finished pieces I create. So when you kind of do solo shows and exhibits and things like that, people then want to buy the work, and like I'm not ready to give it up yet. I want to keep it for
I have
myself.
an idea though. Like, what if we reach to H&H organizers and did the show there? They don't have to buy it. They can buy kits.
That would be cool. Maybe next year.
If somebody is watching this interview, can they take a class with you some like online somewhere?
Yeah, so I'll occasionally do virtual classes, but I also have a Domestika course where you can create a stained glass landscape embroidery, and it'll walk you through step by step how to kind of design your own landscape and different stitches you can use within that as well too.
Well, I'm gonna put all the information about you in the description of this video. So if people want to buy your book, so if they want to buy some kits or take classes with you, they can find you easily. And guys, you know what to do. Go follow Melissa and show her some love from Fiberchats. Thank you so very much for being my guest today. I really enjoyed our conversation.
Well, thank you so much, Irina.